So today we're joined by Jess Starns. So Jess, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit, tell the viewers who you are?
Artist whose practice is mostly collaborative and participatory. So I engage others to make art with me. I usually create art to highlight, I guess, inequalities for disabled people.
Cool. So on that kind of idea around kind of the inequalities, and I think it links quite well into, I think most schools go back this week, and the show's going out on Wednesday, so I think most schools go back tomorrow, I believe, and there were lots of kind of year sevens that'll be going in today for their kind of induction days in secondary school. So that links into a piece of work that you've just done around inclusive education. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, that's right. So on the 23rd of July this year, it marked the 50th anniversary of the Education of Handicapped Children's Act of 1970. And this act meant that children of all compulsory school age had a right to an education. So I wanted to commemorate the act, and as I couldn't be with people, because when I was making the art project, we were in lockdown. So I was recording over Zoom or getting people to send in their recordings of how they felt and how inclusive they felt the school education system is today, and what would their ideal school look like. So I gathered everyone's recordings, and with my mum, we built a school isolation booth, because I felt that in the new year, there was quite a few people chatting about school isolation booths. And I guess, I wanted somewhere where people could sit and listen to the recordings. And I thought that the school isolation booth, was, I guess, what's the word? Maybe like symbolic.
Yeah.
To some people's experiences. Some people's experiences were very positive, and some people's were negative, and some people's were neutral. But in the future, because obviously I made a recording, but obviously people can't visit the booth at the moment. I would love to be able to exhibit it, and for people to go and sit in the booth and to listen to everyone's thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what you were saying around not being able to see people and kind of interact must have been a kind of an interesting challenge, I guess, in creating the piece. I know you said you kind of used Zoom and recordings. Did you feel that, because obviously, you know, everyone started using Zoom in lockdown, or lots of people have started using Zoom. Did you find kind of the learning curve in kind of recording and creating art over Zoom? Or did you kind of just jump into it, and kind of how did that process go, that learning process go?
So I was using Zoom before lockdown, so I already knew of it as a thing. But I really love to be able to produce art with people where maybe it doesn't feel like you're taking part in art. So being able to be involved in a creative piece, but just be having a conversation with someone. Because I think some people, not everyone, but some people have maybe a bit scared of participating in art. They might have had a negative experience of school and might not like to do creative activities. But I guess if you remove like barriers and make it feel like a welcoming space, then people can have their creative ideas shared.
Yeah, no, I think when you're saying around kind of people's experiences but opinions of art, I talked with Hazel Brill last week, who I think you might know, around kind of finding art in places you wouldn't expect. And I think kind of what you're talking about with schools and inclusivity in schools kind of ties in quite well. You know, if your only experience is, you know, draw this bowl of fruit in year 8 and you weren't very good at drawing, you might kind of be a little bit, I don't know if I want to be in an art piece type thing. But actually, I think, yeah, really interesting kind of what you were saying, that it almost, people don't think of it as art almost, even though the contributions that they're making are going towards a piece. It's really interesting. So kind of following on from that, kind of what did you get? What kind of pieces of kind of information? Was there any kind of common threads or anything that you found? I know you said there was kind of mixed experiences.
Yeah.
Is there anything that kind of jumped out to you when you were kind of putting all of the information together?
It was all quite mixed. Because of this difficulty in, I guess, like this time period that we're going through, I wasn't able to speak to people that are currently in the education system. So it was people that left recently, or adults or parents. I would love to have got more under 16s involved, or under 18s. But what I did find out that some people really liked being attending special educational needs schools, and other people kind of felt that didn't give them as much opportunities as it would have done if they were able to go to their local state school. And some people felt that there's been progress in making education inclusive, but it's not quite there just yet. There's still lots of other things that need to be improved.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite lucky in that I went to a mainstream school as a wheelchair user, but kind of even within that, and the school that I went to was excellent. There was still kind of mixed experiences with other pupils and teachers and things. I wish I'd had more time to be able to kind of share my experiences with you. But yeah, it's one of those things that life kind of got in the way, unfortunately. But it sounds that you've kind of got some really good input from people that have kind of been through the education system. I know you mentioned that you've created a kind of a school isolation booth to the kind of the aesthetic of the, I guess, installation. Obviously, might not necessarily be able to kind of exhibit that at the moment with the current situation, which I imagine is quite tough. What are your plans for kind of sharing the piece?
So I recorded as best as I could in my front room of what it's like to exhibit the isolation booth, and that's up on YouTube. I also would like to do some more work around education, as next year in October it will be the 40th year of the Education Act of 1981, which built on the last act I just spoke about, and that act was the first time where the term handicapped was removed and replaced with special educational needs, and I wanted to explore if that's the suitable term for today.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird to think that it was as late as the 80s that they stopped using that, but also it was as early as the 80s that they stopped using that. It's really weird when you think about it, that it sounds so old-fashioned. Yeah, it's almost like, yeah, it's kind of that weird thing that it feels really recent and really far away at the same time. And I think, it shows, like you said, there are changes, things have got better, but there's fortunately still a bit of a ways to go, I think. Is that kind of what you gathered from the pieces as well?
Still quite a lot of improvement that could be done.
Yeah. So then kind of finally, I know you mentioned the act next year. Kind of in an ideal world, kind of what would you want to do to follow up? Would you want to do kind of a sequel piece, or kind of another piece that follows on but it's not kind of directly related?
I think it will be a follow-on piece. So as I said, I would be quite interested to explore about the term special educational needs, and if that's suitable for today.
Cool. Sounds exciting, and I look forward to seeing it, hopefully kind of mid to end of next year, I guess. I don't know the exact date of when the act was, to know roughly when you'll be putting it together. It all sounds really exciting. If people wanted to find your art or find you, where would they look?
And so I have a website, I'm still sort of building it, so it's not as accessible as I would like it to be at the moment. But it's www.jaystarns.com. So my surname is Starns.
Cool. Thank you very much, Jess. So welcome back, Jess. We talked to you a little bit earlier in the show around your art piece around education and special education needs. On a completely different note, and completely different from your normal work, you've just been on a 2-week kind of artist residency. Want to tell us a little bit about kind of what you did and how you found that?
Yeah, so I've just been taking part in the Lightform Lab with the Old Market Theatre in Hove, and I've been learning how to use Lightform, which is projection mapping. So you can use Lightform to scan an object and then project images or footage onto the object. So I've been exploring. So I'd say I'm originally from Brighton, and I've always been interested in this local building material called Bungaroosh. So Bungaroosh is mostly only found in Brighton from the mid 18th to 19th centuries, and it's it's a composite building material of, I guess, lots of local materials such as like stones, sand, pebbles, chalk, flint, and what they used to do is they used to use all these materials to build the houses and set it in hydraulic lime, and it was kind of to get around the brick tax when Prince Regent moved to Brighton. I guess people wanted to live there, and it was just a small village. Really, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was tiny, and people wanted to live there, so they had to build quite quickly. And I guess there was maybe not so many bricks around, so they had nice fronts, Regency fronts, but then the sides and the back, the buildings are made out of this, I guess, found materials.
I've never heard. Is it Bungaroosh?
Yeah, Bungaroosh.
Never heard of that. It sounds really interesting. So it's kind of like the fronts are nice, I guess. They used all the expensive materials on the bit you could see, and then kind of went, this'll do.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. I'm like,
not
no
all
idea.
The buildings, but most of the buildings. I guess they cut corners a little bit.
That's really interesting. A really kind of cool piece of history, I guess.
Yeah. So I projected onto stones images of Bungaroosh, and then images of photographs of the environment of Brighton, like the Regency buildings, and then also you can download images from Brighton Museum's website. So I downloaded older images from the early late 1800s and included them as well.
Cool. That sounds really interesting. So is this something you've kind of played around with before in projection mapping, or is this kind of completely new to you?
No, this is brand new. I just learned how to use Lightform in the last 2 weeks.
How did you find that? Because we've talked a lot about kind of learning new skills during lockdown, or learning new skills in general. So kind of how did you find picking up kind of completely new software?
It was a bit tricky at first. I had difficulty with my coordination, so there were some bits where it took me a while to get the dexterity to do it. But once I played around with it a bit and I understood how it worked, I'm now finding it a great, an accessible art tool for myself that I would like to hopefully use again. It's not a cheap piece of software, so I don't know if I'll personally be able to buy it myself, but I would like to be able to play around with it again.
Yeah, no, it sounds interesting. We'll maybe look forward to a projection mapping piece in the future from you as well. Then go with your project next year. You can project some old school buildings onto some new school buildings. Cool. Well, thank you again, Jess.